Welcome to Hip Hop Movie Club, the show that harmonizes the rhythm of hip hop with the magic of movies. Today, we're discussing Kings from Queens, the newly released 3-part documentary series about the legendary hip hop trio Run-DMC. We're three old heads who put their old heads together to vibe on these films for you. I'm Dino Wright, podcaster, filmmaker, longtime hip hop fan. I saw Run-DMC with Aerosmith in September of 2002, the month before Jam Master Jay was killed.
I'm JB, 80s and 90s nostalgia junkie, longtime hip-hop fan, and 2 years ago, a friend of mine who goes by the name of Dino Wright asked me and Boogie to join his crew. HHMC was born just for you. So we say the things we're about to say. The words are death and they go this way.
Yes.
Some flavor for y'all.
Here we go.
I'm Boogie, a DJ, longtime hip-hop fan, and the song that got me hooked on hip-hop is Sucker MC by Run-DMC. Yes. When did I fall in love with hip-hop? When I heard this song.
In this episode, we'll answer the question, how far-reaching was Run-DMC's impact on hip-hop and pop culture? And we'll give you 5 key takeaways to make you a smarter hip-hop movie fan.
Kings from Queens is a 2024 3-part documentary series chronicling the rise and dominance of the hip-hop powerhouse that we know and love as Run-DMC. We see the origin story, the apex, the struggles, and the undeniable legacy left by this dynamic trio. This documentary shows why Run-DMC is the most responsible for introducing hip-hop to the entire world. The late Jam Master Jay is responsible for the image and the fashion of the group. DMC battled and overcame personal demons along the journey of being a star. Run-DMC revived the Adidas brand of footwear and apparel, as well as the career of the rock group Aerosmith. And Run-DMC inspired the likes of Ice Cube, Eminem, LL Cool J, Chuck D, the Beastie Boys, and many more. All right, let's get right into it. Mention the takeaways, and let's start with the first takeaway about the documentary showing how Run-DMC was most responsible for introducing hip-hop to the entire world. These were the first rock stars of rap, the first rap group on MTV, and they changed the entire sound of music and hip-hop. Boogie, what do you have about, the powerhouse that Run-DMC was and their international influence?
Yeah, so Run-DMC, they grew to prominence pretty quickly because they look just like the guys in the neighborhood. I mean, they dressed like them. They walked and spoke just like them. Before them hip hop groups, they wore costumes. You think of African Bambaataa and the Zulu Nation, Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five. Those artists, they wore costumes. When Run-DMC came to perform, you see them playing a tracksuit, hat, sneakers with the shoelaces out, look like everybody around the way. So when they started gaining local speed, their songs became so in demand that everybody wanted to hear them, see who these guys were. Like you mentioned, JB, they went on MTV. They started doing tours. One of the big doors that opened for them was performing at Live Aid. And, just that alone put them in front of the world. And then from there, they just became such an in-demand artist. People wanted them on film, so we have Crush Groove coming around. And then after that, they became recognizable to the point where they couldn't go anywhere without people knowing who they were. They just, they had the charisma, the style, the flash, the flair, but they were just like everyday guys from around the way. So that was probably the biggest thing that hooked everyone was that, anybody could be Run-DMC. Like you could look at them and you would see some of the characteristics or the movements or the mannerisms within them that remind you of somebody that lived on your block.
True. Relatable. Donna Wright, what do you have?
Yeah, I'd forgotten that Run-DMC was the only rap group at Live Aid. 40 years later, all we hear about really is Phil Collins doing both shows in London and Philly and Freddie Mercury. But yeah, Run-DMC was there too.
Yeah, I had forgotten as well. It wasn't really highlighted.
Yeah,
back then.
I think the one reason that I always remember them performing at Live Aid is because they mentioned my Adidas.
That's right. Sold it. Yeah.
Yeah, still on the stage, Elevate, all the people who gave and the poor got paid.
That's
I'm
right.
like,
Yep.
that always sat in the back of my head, so I always remember them performing there. But but yeah, like you said, it's not really talked about a lot.
And you know why? Because the world wasn't ready for hip hop. And
Yeah.
you see in this the interviews really struck me because, and I think it was a lot of these British interviews for some reason they showed where these guys were saying, so what are you guys doing after this? Like, this hip hop is a fad. Like,
Yeah. Right.
what will you guys be doing in 2 years? Was literally what they said. So these guys were like, we'll be doing this. They fought for the legitimacy of hip hop. Like, they paved the way for so many, and they were loud and bold and courageous. I think one of the quotes was like, loud, courageous pioneers. And that's exactly what they were. They just stood in the face of any type of criticism. You had folks in R&B and, because they don't really use instruments, traditional instruments.
Right.
And so people would just poo-pooed them. They're like, nah, you guys aren't real artists. And,
did you ask the singer if he's going to be singing in 2 years? So why were you ask us to sing? Ask us that question.
Exactly. Art comes in so many different forms. I mean, you could say scatting wasn't like an art form, all these different things that are unique. It's just unique and bold and different. And now fast forward to 2024, hip hop, multi-billion-dollar industry. And these folks were calling it a fad. It's crazy.
Yeah, like most marketing companies, at some point, they got to consider like tapping into hip hop in some way, shape, or form to get their point across. It's everywhere. It's so embedded in our global existence that they don't even think about it. They think, oh yeah, we're just going to do this and that. But we know that's hip hop. They're just thinking that it's something everyday life. Yeah, it's everyday life because hip hop is so ingrained in everyday life now.
I think that theme comes up in so many of our episodes is the ubiquity of hip hop. It's everywhere. I think I must have said this on other episodes, but like, you can't put on TV, network TV, for more than like a few minutes without seeing some form of hip hop, whether it's on a sitcom, on a commercial, on a sporting event, inside a sporting event, as they go to commercial. It's just everywhere. It's so beloved and far reaching. Yep. And these guys were there in the early days fighting for legitimacy. Sure.
Yeah.
Yep. And like you said, they toured. So they introduced it to the entire world. Other folks had toured, but didn't have the type of impact as much as Run-DMC did.
Right.
So, Boogie, you hit a little bit on the image and the fashion of the group because they look like the everyday person in urban centers, where these guys are from Hollis, Queens. So, in what we learned in the documentary, this is the second takeaway, is that the late Jam Master Jay was the one responsible for that image and the fashion of the group. He brought that style. Do you want to speak a little bit more about that?
Sure. So yeah, as the group's songs got bigger, there became a desire for them to be performing these songs live. So now they need a DJ. So they're looking in the neighborhood for the DJs, and there was another guy, Darnell Smith, who's a local DJ. He was actually a friend of Jay's. But there's a story about he got a job at a post office, and he said that he never got a job at a post office. He just got a job in another state. But he wasn't available, so they bring in Jam Master Jay, who was actually had street credibility in the neighborhood to be the DJ. And I know they said they get to their first show, and Jam Master Jay pulls up. He's got the black Adidas tracksuit on with the with the white stripes down the side. His Godfather hat. His Adidas with no shoestrings in them, and everybody just kind of looked at him like, "Yeah, I think, yeah, that's what we're gonna do." and then from that point on, they that's what they dressed like. They all imitated, whatever Jay was, his image or whatever he thought was cool. That's what they wore. And it was funny how in the documentary it shows how they used to dress before and had the plaid blazers on.
They didn't quite hit their stride until Jay came along to
had the plaid blazers. Yeah. I'm like, whoa. Thank God for Jam Master Jay, man.
Yeah.
We working with McDowell's.
And they created the B-boy look. Like, if you look up B-boy, like, that's B-boy style. Like, this is what it is. It's tracksuits. It's Adidas with no laces.
And it's funny because I remember as a youngster, like I had my cousins were, I had cousins that were much older than I was, and they wore Adidas tracksuits. So the good thing about being the youngest one is when they outgrew it.
You get the hand me down. Yeah.
So I had the black one with the red stripes down the side. I had
Nice.
another one that was like color blocked with stripes down the side. I was like, yes. Couldn't tell me nothing.
Yeah. And this was before sneaker culture hit its peak. These were affordable shoes, which was
Yes.
good. People could afford them, and they could dress like Run-DMC. Yeah. Donna Ray, anything else to add about this image, the fashion brought in by Jam Master Jay?
Only to talk about, just so people know, a lot of stuff about his murder and the resolution of the legal process came out after this was released. So if you're looking for, a deep dive into motives and what happened with the murder of Jam Master Jay, this isn't the place to go. But this still is good for seeing how their style evolved and was really taken on a rocket ship when Jay joined the band or joined the group.
Yeah, there's mention of his passing and the mourning, and that's really the dissolution of the group. Like that was pretty much it. They stopped touring. Run went full time into being a reverend. He was already, he had already become a reverend and a Rev Run, but it's kind of like they didn't really produce any more music. They have since kind of reunited for the 50-year hip hop tours, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But it was like, we're the three of us. This is, this is not the same. Jam Master Jay was irreplaceable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we can't bring in another DJ to replace him.
Mm-hmm. So the next topic, takeaway is DMC, Darryl McDaniels. It really showcased or highlighted how he battled and overcame personal demons along the journey of becoming a megastar. Boogie, you want to talk a little about that?
Yeah, so DMC, was known for having that powerful, booming voice that commanded the stage when he rhymed. But originally, DMC didn't want to perform. He wanted to just write. At first, he just had a book of rhymes that he would just write because that was his outlet. He didn't have a therapist or a counselor or anybody like that he spoke with. So anytime he wanted to express himself, he wrote it in his book. Of course, Run in his charismatic ways found out that D had the gift of gab when it comes to rhyming, and convinced him to tag along down to the studio, and they subsequently convinced him to start rhyming. And once everybody heard him, they were like, "Yo, this guy's serious. We need him. Yes, this is what's going to work." So then they start touring and everything, and DMC he almost has to put on a persona every time he goes out on stage to perform. He'd rather write rhymes and read comic books and things like that, typical quote unquote nerd stuff, rather than be out on stage performing. And then when it got down to recording, he said, "You know what? I don't mind recording, but I don't want to perform." But as he goes through these motions, he has to figure out ways to cope with what he's feeling, and it all starts to come to a head as he's getting older and realizing that this is something that's not going to last forever. But I want to figure out what to do with my life. And then unfortunately, Jam Master Jay is murdered, and it really takes him. He takes it really hard. He becomes alcoholic and suicidal, things like that, and not really sure how to to cope with himself. But he starts to realize that I know I skipped the part two is when he was going on a tour. He would take on a persona of different comic book characters to get through his performances. So now at this point in his life, he's trying to figure out how to deal with himself, and he's thinking about. There's several instances where he thinks about taking his own life, and he comes out of an airport at one point, and he gets in I guess it's a cab ride from the airport, and the guy, driving the cab recognizes him and says, "Hey, you got me through this, you got me through that. Your rhymes were brought me through when I was having a really hard time in life, and then he's like, can I just have an autograph? And he's like, yeah, sure. Gives him an autograph. He's like, I could take a picture with you too. And the guy's like, hey, do you mind if I put on the radio? And he puts on the radio, and so he puts on the radio, and the song comes on that changes his life and makes him reconsider, those thoughts that he's having, and he decides that he wants to fight, and then he puts on the fight, and he just starts revitalizing himself and moving forward.
If nothing else, watch this documentary to find out what song saved his life. What unlikely song and artist saved his life.
Yeah. Now, a great breakdown there, Boogie. Like, DMC definitely was the most introspective of the crew, and he battled the bouts of depression on and off. And you said Run had his family life early on. Like, he was always going back home to be with his family, and Jam Master Jay was always out and about socializing. He was kind of life of the party. Whereas, DMC, Darryl McDaniels, was kind of like a bit of a loner. He was a rocker, but he was very introspective, like I said. So he kind of was like left to his own, and it took a toll on him, putting on that face. And again, I thought it was cool that he was inspired by the Marvel superheroes, and that was back before this whole MCU and the mega films, Disney and everything like that. Like, he was down with Marvel.
Yeah,
it's kind of cool.
I saw a DMC at the airport once. This was a few years ago, and he was by himself. So, like he said about being a loner, like he was by himself in the airport. No one was bothering him, which was kind of cool.
Yeah.
Like, if he had come to my terminal or my gate, I might have tried to talk to him. But he's walking around like a normal guy, dressed like a normal guy. It really is him.
Yeah. They do show in the documentary that he does get married, and I think he has a child.
Yeah.
So he kind of has that family bond to help steer him a little bit more. But, in the throes of it, he didn't, he had difficulties, like you said, up to the level of being suicidal, unfortunately.
Yes, I think at one point he says he wants to, he creates the comic book, and that's when his son realized that, oh, Dad's a nerd.
That's right.
Going to Comic Cons and stuff. Like, wait a minute, I didn't know that.
Yeah, if you go back to the beginning documentary of the childhood, like they grew up in Hollis, Queens, and there was crime, throughout the neighborhood, and he would just take refuge in his room and just read his comic books. And that was his outlet. And then he said writing became his outlet. And then, he was forced to front the crew a lot and get out there. Yeah.
I was thinking it's kind of cool though, because I think when I was growing up, I read a lot of comic books too. And like I used to draw characters and make up my own characters and things like that. So I kind of embraced a lot of what he was talking about. Between drawing the characters, and then subsequently, like I used to do a lot of my graffiti and stuff like that. But then I found my way to the turntables via my friend's dad down the street, and that became my other outlet. And then subsequently, like that's pretty much the outlet that I use now. Like most of the time, I rarely draw now. But I won't get away from music. I don't get too far away from the music. But it was cool, like how he was talking about the comic, and like now when you mentioned this whole MCU thing, it's like mind blowing. Like, man, I couldn't imagine having that as a kid. These guys are lucky.
That's right.
I gotta jump up and down and look like a big kid jumping up and down. They can jump up and down and be a kid.
Yeah, we can relate to the, if you guys haven't noticed, if you're listening, we're kind of nerds, it's like we're doing deep dives on these things. We talked about MCU a little bit in the past. We did a Spider-Verse episode, Transformers, and stuff like that. So yeah, DMC's our guy. So another takeaway was Run-DMC as a crew. They revived the Adidas brand of footwear and apparel, which was really kind of at a low point. And like for them, putting them on the map by wearing their stuff and even doing the song called My Adidas. But they also revived the career of the rock group Aerosmith. I mean, Aerosmith was a classic rock group, popular like in the 70s and had a couple hits in there, but they were dormant for quite a while. And then with that collaboration with Walk This Way, boom. You guys want to talk a little bit more about how they did both of those things?
Yeah, so I mean, the Adidas, takeaway was kind of cool because like they weren't even setting out to get any kind of endorsement or deals or anything like that. That's just what they wore. It's like, hey, everybody in the neighborhood wear their affordable sneakers. They look cool. Everybody wears them. So, when they wanted to, when they embraced the style of wearing the track jackets and the track suits and things like that to go with them, that's just what they did. And, it was funny because Leroy Cohen, who now, like most, people in hip hop know that name, Leroy Cohen. I didn't even realize that he started off as their road manager. I was like, wow, that's Leroy Cohen, the Leroy Cohen. It's like, wow. But he was honest. He said, the Adidas deal would have happened with or without him being involved, which was actually, big of him to say that because you think about it, yeah, somebody would have been like, would have caught wind of it. But it just happened he was in the right place at the right time. And he contacted some, execs over at Adidas and said, hey, come to this concert down in Madison Square Garden. I want to show you guys something. I don't even think he hinted at what they were going to see. But, Run is on stage and he just holds up one sneaker. And he's like, yo, everybody in the crowd, do the same thing. And then all you see is a bunch of hands go with an Adidas sneaker in their hand. And before they got off the stage, it kind of solidified that they were making an impact on the sales for Adidas, and Leo, negotiated the $1 million contract deal with Adidas, and I remember when that happened too, because they had commercials, billboards, posters everywhere. I remember they had like the limited edition Adidas with Run-DMC on them on the sneakers. The Adidas forums you couldn't buy those sneakers anywhere. You couldn't find them anywhere. They were selling out everywhere. The superstars were selling out. The classic shell toes were selling out. Like they would come in and gone quick. Like, I mean, if you had a small foot, you could probably find them. But a guy like me with a big foot, couldn't find them.
Yeah.
I don't even think I think I had a couple pairs of forums, but when I was younger, I never had a pair of I had a pair of some Stan Smiths, but I never had the shell toes. I couldn't find them. Could never get them. I could get them now, but couldn't get them back then. Yeah.
You done right? Anything to add about the Adidas connection?
No, Wookie covered it quite excellently.
Yeah, I mean, there was one scene that we talked about before we were recording. There was that former executive from Adidas who was tearful and like so thankful and grateful for what Run-DMC did for their brand. I think he mentioned that they were kind of struggling, and then when they had the song and everything, like their sales just rocketed up, and what a boon for the brand. I believe what the deal was that they gave them like $1 million and anything that they wanted. It's like, all right, $1 million and like whatever shoes you want, because they were just raking in the dough with it was free endorsement up until that point.
Yeah.
And then they had the deal. So that was incredible. Just an incredible marriage of the brand. And then, maybe that's kind of responsible for maybe the sneaker culture and hip hop being tied together for forever to this day. Jordans and Nike and whatever brands that people want. And then you got, hip hop stars having their own lines and et cetera of shoes, sneakers.
Yeah. Jay-Z had his S. Carter's with Reebok. Kanye recently, up to fairly recently, just had his own line with Adidas.
Right. Yeah. All paved the way by Run-DMC.
Travis Scott has some Nike variants that comes out every so often. Those things sell out like hotcakes. If you don't put your order in within they'll release them at 10 o'clock. By 10:01, if you haven't put your sale through, you're not getting them. You're in line. You're in a digital line, and you won't get them unless you get them on resale.
Right. So I want to talk a little bit more about Run-DMC's connection with Aerosmith and their impact on Aerosmith's career. So when they collaborated with Walk This Way in the mid '80s, like that really put Aerosmith back on the map. Nobody in our generation had known who Steven Tyler was, probably.
Unless you're a rock guy, but
unless you're a rock guy, but like Aerosmith could have easily gone the way of like Supertramp or Grand Funk Railroad. It's like, all right, there's a group there, or Kansas or something like that. Like they're a group, they had a couple hits, and then I'll go back and listen to them. But like after that, like Aerosmith's like a hot commodity, and then like they were soaring through the charts through the '90s, mega hits,
Yeah.
And like I was just joking that without Run-DMC, there's probably no Rock and Roller Coaster in Disney World. You don't see Steven Tyler and their crew on Polar Express and stuff like that. like these guys are like up there in the upper echelon of rock groups. And I really think that, and Ad Rock from Beastie Boys in an interview mentioned that like they saved Aerosmith's career and put them back on the map. And
so
like
put into perspective, Walk This Way, the original, came out in 1975, and so 11 years later, Run DMC uses it for their version and just brings them back, and then Aerosmith's next album goes like multi-platinum, and so thanks to hip hop, rock gets a new life.
And when they were talking about how they wanted to walk this way, the genius Rick Rubin had, I think they were going to do a totally different version of it and whole different lyrics. And then Rick Rubin's like, if you listen to the way that Aerosmith did it back in '75, it has a hip hop adjacent flow. Like it's fast, it rhymes, and it can work. Just put the beats and dub it that way and make it your own in a hip hop format. And it was brilliant.
Yeah. A direct cover of the song, not even a remake or not even an interpretation. It's like a direct cover. That was genius.
Yeah.
I remember when I first heard the song, it took me years before I realized that wasn't even their lyrics. As a kid, I always thought that was their lyrics. And then as I got older, I was like, wait a minute. And I heard the original. I'm like, wait a minute. Run DMC just saying the same stuff that they said the whole time. And it was like my mind said, he filled the room. And I was like, done. Couldn't believe it.
So when you think about it, Aerosmith was like ahead of their time because it's kind of rap adjacent. Like, hey diddle diddle, the kitty in the middle, and like it just don't care. So it's like, all right, that totally lends itself to hip hop. Yeah, definitely. Mega hit, and I like the video too, where they're because it's a meshing.
It's a great video.
It's a fun video. I love that
it's
video.
Kind of like Run DMC's working in their little studio, and then Steven Tyler and crew are working in theirs, and it's like they're pounding on the wall, like, hey, and all of a sudden just breaks through, and it's like, all right, let's do this.
The same song.
All right.
Yeah, that Rock and Roller Coaster is a fun ride too.
Oh yeah, that's the one that goes like 0 to 60, whatever, in like no time. Upside down. That. Yeah. Oh yeah, that's.
Yeah, I rode that in the very front.
Yeah,
in the very back.
My family loves that one too. Awesome. One other takeaway that we wanted to talk about: the way that Run-DMC inspired so many other hip hop artists. You see, Ice Cube, Eminem, LL Cool J, Chuck D. Obviously, the Beastie Boys, you can see the admiration. You want to talk a little bit about that, Boogie? How we see the influence?
Yeah, I mean, like you look at guys like, Ice Cube and Eminem just talking about the very first record, the very first time they listened to a Run DMC record. LL Cool J signing with Def Jam and being taken under Russell's wing. And almost having a bit of a sibling rivalry with Run DMC, like they pushed one another, like because they looked at LL was like, yo, he's. They said they would always tease Run and say, yo, L's coming for your crown. He's coming for your crown. He's coming for your crown. And I will push Run harder. But at the same time, LL Cool J is not having the same obstacles to deal with as Run DMC did. So he has more of a cleaner lane, but he's trying to aspire to be like them because he sees all of the success and the accolades that they're achieving. So he wants to be like them, and then you look at, same thing with the Beastie Boys. And there was a joke. It said, the Beastie Boys, or what would happen to Run DMC if they were white.
Yeah.
And they had a great camaraderie as well. They would go on tours together, and I'm sure there's so many stories that they can't even talk about of the antics that went on tours with those guys. And then Chuck D's retrospective on being up in Adelphi University working at the radio station, and the very first time he received that white label Sucker MC's record, and he listened to it, he said, "Oh man, we got to throw this on." And at a time where, and he put it on at a time where a lot of radio stations were not playing hip hop at all, and they definitely weren't playing Sucker MCs, because Sucker MCs, as Russell Simmons, relayed, that song was for the streets. That was for the locals. That was for the hood. That wasn't even supposed to be the hit. That was just something that was raw that they wanted to put out for the people in the neighborhood to listen to. But when Chuck D heard it, he put it on his radio show, and it just kept playing. And then, everybody's playing the song over and over again. But you could definitely see in all of these legends in the game, Ice Cube, Eminem, LL Cool J, Chuck D, the Beastie Boys, etc. They're all legends in the game. Even they had Salt from Salt and Pepper talked a bit. One of the great, female lyricists, period. But definitely one of the biggest hip hop female artists of all time. And you could see the deep admiration that all of them had for Run DMC, and how Run DMC kicked down doors, knocked down walls, and paved the way for them to become the artists that they were, and how they all, would listen to the songs as they were writing their own, and had that admiration. Hey, listen, they're making it big. I want to make it like them. So we're going to write harder. We're going to work harder. We're going to aspire harder, to be like them.
Definitely. Donna, anything to add on that?
Yeah, you can tell just how influential they are when you have all of these stars, appear in the documentary and just talk about, the profound impact they had. It wasn't just, these rappers. It's also Tom Morello from Rage Against the Machine, and not just other rappers, but other musicians too.
Right, they were bold. I mean, that's one of the biggest adjectives that I took away. It's like they were just so bold, courageous, and their content too was fun. And I think that we should touch on this a little bit too. Is that they were not about any negativity whatsoever. They were about having a good time and partying, and talking about the person. They revealed some of their personalities, and what happened though, like where they kind of lost some steam, so to speak, was like in the late 80s, whereas the rise of the West Coast gangster rap and NWA becomes popular. And these are more or less hip hop with a message, political message or social message. And the young urban youth were listening to that, and even suburban youth, listened to this, and they fell in love with it. And now they wanted something with a more deeper meaning. And so Run DMC wasn't really, about that. So they kind of lost some popularity, lost some steam. And there was that one scene where, remember when they went out to the West Coast, and there was a guy, I think he was from the Crips, I guess, right? Or riding up on the bike because he was wearing the blue. And he's like, yeah, it's going down tonight. It's going down tonight. And a DMC was like, yeah, we're going to rock the show. He had no idea that there was going to be some act of violence or some craziness, right? And that threw them for a loop. And then there was violence in the crowd.
Brawls, brawls, but it was still a bad smear.
It was bad, and then Run DMC had to deal with a lot of negative press because of that, and they had nothing at all to do with it. And that was, I think, that kind of left a sour taste in a lot of people's mouth about hip hop in general. And then Run DMC was kind of had a stain on them in terms of like, are they promoting violence or like, associated with it? Guilty by association. Yeah.
There was an early clip there was a clip in there from with Jam Master Jay talking, and he said, "Hey, listen, like we realize that we have an influence on people. So while we have this platform and this voice, we want to be positive. We want to spread positivity. We want to be good role models for the kids, and they always strive for that. Which was cool. I always thought that was cool of them, that they weren't really talking about, shooting people and robbing people and things like that. They just kind of rhymed. Hey, I'm the best there is, and if that's what it is, so be it. And their rhymes were always focused on their rap their rap lyricism and how great they were as an MC, not necessarily taking anyone out.
Yeah, I don't think there's any type of diss tracks or anything in their history that I can think of.
But then, there's the other they were trying to do that whole New Jack Swing thing too, but that we don't talk about that.
Yeah. So they experimented with that. Was that before Pete Rock got engaged with them, involved with them? And so they do really thank Pete Rock for reviving their career after they hit that downturn when they came out with Down with the King, which was Down with the King is a great song. It uses the Sucker MC refrain a little bit, and it evokes that, and it works so well. That became a smash hit, put them back on the map, and everybody beloved that. Allowed them to tour the world again. Like that was like a second life for them.
It was that Down with the King and then Run's House.
Yeah.
Woof. They're back.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So I think, we were talking about this as a crew here. It's so hard to narrow down to like our favorite songs. And we'll kick it to you, Dynamite, first here. What would you say are your 5 favorite Run-DMC songs of all time?
Boy, this is so tough. But I've settled on Sucker MCs, My Adidas, King of Rock, Me, Myself, and My Microphone, which they did with Living Color for the Judgment Night soundtrack, and Walk This Way. Man, it was hard to make that list.
It's hard. Go ahead.
You leave out such good ones, too.
I couldn't do it. I tried. Like, it was funny because my initial list was Sucker MCs, Rock Box, Beats to Rhymes, King of Rock, Peter Piper. Them like, wait a minute, my Adidas isn't on there. Mary's not on there. Here We Go's not on there. Run's House not on here. I was like, oh my god, I can't do it.
Yeah, it's tough. It's
so hard.
It's like naming your favorite children. We love them all.
Yeah, really.
Right.
If I had to go top 5, I go with Peter Piper, King of Rock, Rock Box, Down with the King, and You Be Illin'. And just because it's so hilarious, like I used to sing that all the time. I had to be like 5th, 6th grade or something like that. Me and my friends, we would just sing it because it was so goofy.
It was so funny.
But again, I'm leaving off Sucker MC. Like, how can I leave off Sucker MCs? How can I leave off, I left off Walk This Way. And I just think it was because it was played so much that it's, I become a little bit desensitized to the greatness of it.
Yeah.
This documentary really reminded me just how good Sucker MCs was. And, when they play it and you hear how DMC's flow goes with the beat, it's like, wow, it's so good. It's so powerful.
Like I said, this is the song. That's the song that got me hooked, man. I remember it, like, man, because like I tell people all the time, like the songs before it, like Nucleus, Jam On It, and what's that? Grandmaster Flash and the Furious 5, and Africa Bottom Nation. And even, the Sugar Hill Gang, all of those songs had that disco type flow to it. Mm-hmm. There was like a sample of a song or a sample of a disco song, or it was disco adjacent. Mm-hmm. And here comes this boom, cat, 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 boom, cat, cat. I'm like, what is that song? Like, what is that? It just, like, everybody went nuts. The whole hood went nuts around here. Unbelievable. Like, we were on a bus trying to figure out what they were saying, and seeing who could come up with the rest of the rhyme till we could finally get the first verse, and it was like a big success story when everybody finally was able to say the first verse in unison. The whole bus was rocking.
Yeah, man. And Run and DMC, like, they still have it. Like, I was fortunate to see them perform at the Rock the Bells Festival last summer in August. Man, oh man, they put on a show, and they are still like in perfect harmony with each other, picking up where each other left off, and they have the energy. And I'm like, man, they did a great set, all as many of the classics as they could fit, and man, it was great to see them live. I think Jam Master Jay's son may have been out there as well, like helping. I don't know if he was actually DJing, but he was part of the crew. Yeah, just legendary stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I can't say enough great things about the group, and the documentary is amazing. Like I said, you have to see this for all the reasons we mentioned here.
Absolutely.
Any other parting words on Kings from Queens? Just be careful how you Google it. You might end up with Kevin James, coming up, and Leah Remedies. Kings from Queens, not
Kings of Queens.
Not Kings of Queens, yeah. I was like, what's that documentary again? Kings of Queens? No. That was taken. Yep.
Yeah, there was one thing it was almost at the very end where Rev Run is going, we're sitting in the car and he's talking about how he'd go out to the beach every day, and he said that there was one quote regarding Jam Master Jay. He said, like, all fairy tales end, you'll see Jay again, my friend. And I was like, huh.
That was deep.
Yeah. It was. Yeah.
Yeah.
You can see how Run, Joseph Simmons, was leaning more towards a pious life when he, in Down with the King, when he has that line, if the G-O-D be in me, then the King I be. And he's kind of that kind of like stuck with him. He's like, yeah, I want to have that type of impact on people and that connection, with the higher authority.
Yeah. He's always been hitting at it his whole life. Mm-hmm. Even if you look at, what we're going to talk about, Crush Groove his father was in the church and a minister in the church. And, I don't think was his father and in real life an actual minister. I'm not sure, but that was actually his dad that played him in the movie.
Right.
It was funny.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's always kind of walked that line of like, all right, am I going to do it? Am I not going? So when he did it, it was like nobody was really surprised,
Did you guys watch any of his reality show? I didn't really.
Yeah, I used to watch it here and there.
Mm-hmm. I didn't.
No.
Yeah.
What was it? Was it called Run's House?
Run's House. It was Run's House.
There's a great reference to Run's House in Dogma with Matt Damon and Ben Affleck.
Yes.
It sticks with me still.
Mm-hmm.
It's a good one. Definitely a good one.
Yeah. It's one you can rewatch too.
This is on the Peacock network.
That's right.
Or Peacock streaming service.
Do we want to bring this funky flick back?
Of course. It goes without saying. I didn't even think we'd go around and do that.
We don't even need to.
It's a no-brainer. It's a no-brainer.
Yeah, it's a no-brainer right here. If you can't figure out that we're bringing this funky flick back, then...
It was well done.
You weren't listening.
Exactly.
Yeah, you weren't listening. Sharpen your comprehension skills, I believe.
Yeah, if you had any doubt, you'd be illin'. You be illin', man.
All right. Hip Hop Movie Club is produced by your HHMCs, JB, Boogie, and Dino Wright. Theme music by Boogie. Come on out to a conversation with Chuck D, April 16th, 2024 at the Spartan Center of the Bethlehem campus of Northampton Community College. Our man DJ RM18, Andrew McIntosh, will be in conversation with the legend himself. We'll be there. Come out and hang with us. Get your free tickets for a conversation with Chuck D at northampton.edu. And whether you're listening to the podcast or watching us on YouTube, we appreciate you. Thanks for tuning in.
And remember, don't hate, captivate.
Ooh-wee.
Just like Run-DMC did.
Yes.
Captivate the world.
Absolutely.